So with that, I'm so excited to introduce our panel moderator, the incredible Kari from our marketing team. Kari is our Senior Product Marketing Manager, and he also leads the Black & Bevy ERG. Welcome, Kari.
Thank you for the kind words, Marsha.
Awesome. So Kari, over to you to introduce our amazing panelists.
Absolutely. So today I have the pleasure of moderating what should be a dynamic conversation with some of the most amazing community builders and culture champions in their respective areas. So Alyssa, I'll tee you up first, but if you wouldn't mind for the full panel to introduce yourselves, briefly share what brought you to do this type of work, and then also if you can end on the feeling you had after your first ERG experience, whether it was like the introduction of an ERG, a meeting that you attended, or any form of interaction. But Alyssa, over to you.
Thank you, and hi everybody. My name is Alyssa Curtin, and I am a Senior Customer Success Manager by day at LinkedIn. I've been at LinkedIn for almost 5 years, sitting in our Chicago office, and I work with search and staffing firms, helping them use our tools to their fullest capabilities. But my side gig, and what I'm here to talk to you all about, is I am the global co-chair for a employee resource group at LinkedIn called Enable In, and our mission is to create awareness and belonging moments around disabilities and also mental health. So thinking about, ERGs, why did I get involved in this? My first feelings after an ERG event, but at LinkedIn, when we were, of course, virtual, so 5 years ago, I went to ERG kind of, round the room. You can go check out and hear about the different ERGs that we have available. And as I walked into the room, I saw a woman who was there who did my onboarding hiring. So I went over to her booth and I talked to her and I was like, hey, what ERG do you represent? And she told me all about Enable In and how we help and create awareness for disabilities and mental health. And it was really near and dear to my heart. And it inspired me. And I was like, I have to sign up for this ERG. I have to be a member. And I can really change LinkedIn. And of course, at that time, and still now today, I'm like, I can change the world. So my first experience with ERGs is inspiration and that need to want to change and help drive that mission forward.
So much, and that inspiration, particularly the empowerment to change the world, or at the very least your area, your company, is exactly what I felt the first time I went to an ERG meeting. Next, I'll tee up Lorelei, if you'd love to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Carrie. I'm Lorelei Vorsanger. Nice to meet you. I work for VMware, and just like Lissa, I have a regular Clark Kent job and then a superhero job. And that is that I work for the Chief Digital Technology Office. I do change management and project management, and then by night and weekends and any time in between, I'm the global co-lead for women at VMware. And VMware has a bunch of different ERGs, and that's the one that I'm mostly in charge. I mean, I am in charge of, and then the other ones I participate in as a very active ally. And I've been at VMware for about 5 years. I was there for 2 years as a consultant, and I was itching to get involved with women at VMware. Super passionate and just scratching at the screen door, like, let me in, guys, let me in. And then as soon as I got hired as an employee, I showed up at the first meeting and I'm like, hi, I want to help. And the way that I wanted to help, the thing that really got me inspired was actually, yes, there was community, but they had not quite organized around data. And as a project manager and change manager, I was like, wait, you're not looking at data? Hold on, missed opportunity. And it was like, my fingers were itching. And so I was working on communications and membership. And then that started to expand. Events. Well, what events have you had in the past? And they're like, I don't know. What did we have? What did we have last year? Like, it was all tribal knowledge. So I was like, we got to capture this. This could be great. And so I took it upon myself to start capturing those things. And simply by doing that, I ended up setting myself up for this really fun role to lead the ERG, which is now, it started at about 1,500 members, and now it's at 6,000. And so it's growing and it's exciting. And anyway, I have a lot to brag about, but it continues to be a really, really fun and important part of my role.
And also the ability for you to take your skill set and love for data and probably a natural acumen and really apply it to scale women at is brilliant. Dr. Brandy, if you wouldn't mind taking us home for introductions.
Sure, I am Dr. Brandy Baldwin, founder of the Calling All Allies Project. We're a DEI innovation and organizational equity firm, and we're all about igniting workplace unity. That's what got me into this work. You know, diversity, equity, and inclusion can seem so daunting, so tough. It can cause a little bit of divisiveness too in our workplaces. And with so many of us spending more time at work even than we spend at home awake, you know, I really wanted to make sure that we could put a team together that helps companies nationally and internationally create strategies so they can ignite workplace unity. So I used to, before my entrepreneurial journey and career, work in corporate America. And so my first sort of introduction to the ERGs was what they would call the Young Professionals Network at that time. That's where they put all the millennials. I'm almost 40 now, but back in the day, we were the young professionals and emerging leaders. And one of the things I loved about that type of community was that you were able to be around people that were like you in one respect, but there still was diversity there. And so I think ERGs, you know, we think of them as these affinity groups, but even within those groups, there's so much diversity, there's so much difference. And I think that we can do more when we think about the future of ERGs and really looking at that small ecosystem as a unique and diverse group within the larger, you know, context of the organization. So I'm excited for today's conversation. I'm ready to go. So thank you.
Likewise. And also, most certainly, we'll circle back to that idea. Lorelei definitely hit upon it, but there's the, you know, pouring into your ERG, but how do you show up as an ally for particularly ERGs that have that horizontal type of, you know, intersectionality? But with that being said, would love to hear more about the programs you run within the ERG, or Dr. Brandy's case, like in terms of consulting, how you might like fine tune perhaps an ERG. But Lorelei, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off for that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our ERG runs a couple of different programs. We have a mentorship program that matches, I think it's senior director and above, with director level and below. We have return to work programs that are particularly popular in India. And then we have an executive shadowing program and a reverse mentoring program. So executive shadow, you tag along with one of the executives, usually a vice president, and you follow them digitally, virtually, to meetings, and you get to be a fly on the wall, and you get to watch how they behave and interact, and how that might be different from you, so that it can inform your behavior, so maybe you get promoted. And then reverse mentoring is for our upper level executives. They are paired with somebody who is not like them, and so they talk to that person and find out what's it like to be you at VMware. We also do professional development, culture type programs, conference representation and speaking, community engagement, and give back. And then, of course, all of our geeky data stuff around membership communication. And then we have geographic representation because VMware is 35,000 people global. And so we want to find out not just what's it like to be in the San Francisco Bay Area, but what do people need all around the world?
I appreciate that. And just out of that spread, because you really hit on it, different folks, particularly like mentorship, like bidirectionally, community engagement, etc. Is there a program that just like gets you so excited and like almost like chills when you are working on it, or is love shared equitably across programs?
No, I wish I could say that, yes, we pay attention to all of our programs equally, but professional development is definitely like out in front. That is the one that is super popular. Every single time that we put a professional development event on the calendar, there's like 350 people, 400 people who show up. And it's everything from, you know, communication to getting that promotion. And we organize those events very frequently. I think we had 85
Oh, wow.
85 events last year. I'm kind of hiding because that seems like a lot. Like maybe we should have toned it down a little bit, but because what we do is anybody who's hosting an event all around the world, I, as the global co-lead, will sort of digitally scurry over there and be like, hey, I see the thing that you're doing. Looks like you have a totally hot vendor with a great topic. Can we explode that? Can we offer it globally? And why can't we? And then, and most people say, yeah, sure, the more the merrier. And then our events get big, which is great. So I think we served, I want to say, like maybe 30,000 attendees last year. It's a lot. And it's fun. That's the one that gets us really excited.
Incredible, because I think it's twofold. One, you're listening to your community, and very clearly there's a need for professional development, but also in a lot of ways, it's the beauty of virtual events in which now, because you can hop on, a platform, like ultimately, you're able to connect in ways that we weren't able to. So Alyssa, I would love to hear on your end, briefly a bit more about programs you run, and if there's any particular program that just really gets you excited and energized.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm trying to keep in mind that we aren't supposed to be taking notes throughout this because I'm like mentorship programs. We're trying to roll that out in Enable-In right now. And I'm like, these are so good. So I'll definitely be listening to this recording afterwards. And Lorelai, thanks so much for sharing what you're doing too. I think it's also fantastic. So as I mentioned before, for Enable-In, our mission and vision is around creating awareness and belonging moments for disabilities and mental health. So we really like to program through two big months that we have. One is Mental Health Awareness Month in May. So that's very, very large. It's very important. And we bring in guest speakers. We host mental health panels where employees get on the panel and they're sharing their mental health journey. The impact that that has had at LinkedIn is astronomical because we're trying to create safe spaces for people to discuss their mental health and have open conversations about it. It's been kind of a taboo conversation to have in the past. So we're really driving, creating those safe spaces for mental health. The other big month that we activate in is October because it's National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So we have about 20 different programs going on globally this month. I have a couple later today that I'm going to attend that I'm excited about, but they range from everything from tech talks about our product that we're rolling out. They were bringing in a sign language professional, and he's going to teach us how to do sign language by music. It's a really fun class. I've taken his course before. And then we're also bringing in guest speakers. So any type of education that we can do, any type of awareness that we can raise, that's what we really tried to program around in these two big months for our pillars. But we're also trying to drive the conversation forward throughout the year as well. So it's connecting with employees. We now have employees share their disability stories, or if they have a family member who's disabled or their experience with mental health, we'll take those stories and showcase them in our newsletter and get them out so other people can feel comfortable sharing their stories. So those are kind of the big things that we work on throughout the year to help continue to drive these conversations forward while focusing on our big programs that we have in May for Mental Health Awareness Month and October for National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Oh, and then programs that get me really excited to answer your second question that you asked. Honestly, these mental health panels that we do are amazing to me, and just the conversation that happens after these panels is just so heartwarming to me. So 2 years ago, when I came up with my global co-lead at the time, hey, we should do these panels. I held one in Chicago and it went really well. And let's just see how it goes. So in the beginning, we had around 50 people joining globally. So we do a panel in each region, NAMER, EMEA, and APAC, 50 people globally joining. Tomorrow, we have a panel and there's over 400 globally joining. So the fact that we went from there a year and a half ago to tomorrow, it just shows how many people want to share these stories and how impactful they are. So I walk away from these panels, we hold them on a quarterly basis, and I just see how much it's touching everyone. And there's people who want to share their stories. We had like 80 people sign up to share their stories, and we can only pick 9 panelists. So it's been really great and very special to be a part of that and to be a part of that conversation at LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk a bit more, but LinkedIn is truly innovative, like really like a thought leader in the space of ERGs. And so the beauty of an ERG, right, is giving visibility to people, particularly in scenarios that they feel like they don't have it. So just a lot of kudos there. Dr. Brandy, if you wouldn't mind telling us a bit more about programs that you run, and then also same type of question, what gets you energized, or what type of engagements really get you excited in the morning?
Sure. So a couple things, because I'm kind of positioned as that, and my team, of course, the Calling All Allies Project, we're those kind of external supporters. We're the people behind the people who are doing the great work, like Lisa, like Lauralee, and other organizations. And so what we really do is we help you figure out and kind of optimize the ERGs. I think a dirty little secret that's not applicable to all organizations, but for a couple of years there, ERG groups in some organizations were kind of these other groups, put them together over there, right? It's like the after school program, the social club, right? Oh, they'll do like panels and pizza parties and, things like that in terms of executive and senior leaders. And I think that what we're working towards now is really helping to bridge the gap between these groups, these amazing communities, and really supporting the business function and connecting that to the rest of the company. And so rather than the Young Professionals Network, for example, doing a lot of happy hour and social events, let's really see what are the managers saying that the millennials in the organization need to improve upon. What are some of those skill sets, and how can we leverage that ERG group to help them get ahead? Instead of the millennials saying, wow, there aren't enough mentorship opportunities here, there aren't enough, how do I climb up the ladder? How can we use the ERG to really play that role to support career development? And so I definitely, and both, they've already spoken about the variety of types of events, right? We have informational, we have educational, we have social, we have mentorship. And so you want to make sure in your ERG group that you're looking at how can we use this group of this community to support the business and to support the career development of everyone involved. When you do that, you will find that executives will perk up, your budget numbers will perk up, because I know ERGs have limited budgets at times. And then also your membership and your engagement, your sustained engagement. You don't want people that are just kind of in and out, but you want people to really be there consistently and be raving fans and advocates for that group. So I get really excited when we're able to kind of solve those problems, find those gaps and those blind spots and say, boom, this is one thing you can do here for the veterans at XYZ group, or this is one thing you can do for the abilities group, or so on and so forth. So the sky's the limit here. But I think as we move into kind of 2022 and beyond, we really need to double down and use these as, supportive of the business. It's that leverage that the company can use to make sure that, you stay competitive. It's the talent wars out here right now. And the difference between somebody staying or leaving your organization or referring a highly qualified friend, colleague, or family member to work could be that experience that they have in their ERG group. So I think for those organizations that are maybe just starting or just getting some traction, they may not be as huge as LinkedIn or VMware and others. It's about quality, not quantity. When you get that capacity, when you have that capacity, then you can do more with a lot. But don't despise the day of small beginnings. I think that some great quality small group programming is important. And honestly, all of this gets me excited, okay? I don't do caffeine. I don't do sugar. I'm one of those herbal tea people. People just want to, how is she just energetic all the time? Because, we're working with people. We're working with humans. If you really want to work at a place and with people that actually genuinely like people and humans, in this digital age. And so I get so excited, and everyone at our team is like, let's go. Diversity is something that's been here. It's here to stay. And if we honor the D, the E, and the I always say we have to honor that, then this work becomes so fun. It's not challenging. It's not tough. It's rewarding. And that helps you to push through some of those sticky moments for sure.
And literally when I said, I was like, hope this doesn't come off as a trick question, because like the answer is everything excites us. But I love that. And you hit on so many different pieces as it relates to not treating ERGs as monolithic. Each ERG needs to have very intentional programming. Love the call out of like, right, you have two very great examples of phenomenal companies that are really committed to DE&I, but that should not discourage folks that are in the startup stage or whatever journey they are as a company. So we'll hit on those pieces, but really fast before we get to the 2022, when we think about 2021 and 2020, I would love to just get like a few quick words in terms of like challenges or triumphs that you all have respectively faced in your area. And I will turn it to Dr. Brandy first, and then Lorelei.
Okay, wow, I'm up first, ladies. All right, so let's start with the challenges. Every challenge is an opportunity here, okay? I think I'm going to really piggyback on something that we already alluded to, which is really the data. We have to be mindful and collect data on an ongoing basis about how are we doing, what can we do better, and that just, we need to include ERGs in that, in our ERG programming and what our members want. The times are changing very quickly. The workforce is changing. There are things that are keeping our employees up at night. And so sure, it may be cool to host a nice, fun program that's educational, but maybe we need to have a little bit more of a grounded discussion about, and to Lissa's point, mental health. How are we doing? Because see, the millennial parenting experience, for example, is going to be different from maybe an older parent, someone from a different generation. A parent who is taking care of someone with a disability, a child with a disability, is a different experience. And so we need to sort of reverse engineer and say, what are the things holding our workplace back, holding our employees back? What are the things they really want? And I think we can program to that, meet people where they are. So I think that's one of the challenges, is like great, fun, good things, but are these the most relevant programs and ideas for where our workforce is today? How they're stressed out this year with this particular context of COVID-19 or anything else that may be happening. Another thing, and then I think the data can help with that, right? These pulse checks, these just check-ins consistently. One of the challenges though with data is, usually in corporate, I see this, it takes way too long to get the information and feedback back, right? So we see the data, we're sitting on it, we're having meetings about meetings about meetings, and then we come with this fancy little deck. By the time you've given us the information, first of all, we gave you the data, we knew that. You're telling us the answers already 3 months later, but what are the solutions? And so I would say if you can minimize the time between kind of collecting data and getting it back out to people who took their time to respond, that would be great. And the other little small challenge I want to mention is, I always say, if you're a patient, you can't do surgery on yourself. And so there's just some types of data, some type of feedback that you may need an external person or firm or someone to do, because people internally, they have challenges. I want to be on brand. I'm looking at the chat, Courtney and Lydia and Philip, and then, when they're working with their colleagues, they want to be on brand. So they may not be as inclined to give you certain feedback. They may be a little bit nervous about, their brand and where they're going in the company. And so sometimes externally it can create a better, safe place to know that the data is being handled and managed by someone that has no horse in that race except for to provide, a service being equitable. So just be mindful with the data. Triumph, though, I'll just kind of keep it simple here. I think one of the things that I've seen, and we've been helping some of our clients with, is this cross collaboration piece. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially the inclusion piece, we think about these ERGs, but what I've seen some of our clients have challenges with is their company is almost becoming more siloed, right? And it's like a reverse effect in these ERGs. And so we've created some opportunities where, how can we cross collaborate? How can we bridge those gaps so that the Young Professionals Network and Abilities Group and the Asians at this group and the Blacks at this group, or the African American, however you want to call it, right, can collaborate for better understanding? That's going to be really key as we move forward, to make sure that we're not moving backwards in our efforts of using ERGs to create those micro communities. So, yep, I'll leave it there.
You, Lorelei.
Yeah, so 2020 and 2021 were, I agree with Dr. Brandy, they were really isolating, and especially for people who were hired at that time. They're like, they get their laptop in the mail and they're like, okay, I don't know anyone. Like, how do I find my people? And it was a really, in a way, a great leveler for our ERG. Now, I work remotely all of the time. I'm a couple of hours from Palo Alto, so you really have to make a really good business case for me to drive all that way. Then I complain about it the whole time. But I would see all these advertisements for the Women at VMware team, and they would say, stop by the conference room and pick up your cupcakes. And I'm like, oh, cupcakes, I'd like that. But as we started to move into that 2020 weirdness, we did a pivot. And the pivot was, it's not about like women loving up women. It still is, but it's much more about driving a business agenda and honestly being taken seriously. Because previously it seemed a little bit like people who are not our allies would kind of scoff and be like, oh, isn't that cute? The women's group is having cupcakes. And that's not what it's about, right? If you are an underrepresented group or a community in the workplace, you really need people who are like you so that you can gain inspiration and ideas and you can build that community. So I think that 2020 and 2021 actually, even though they were very isolating in that you're just working like just you and your laptop, the need for connection was greater. Our attendance at our events skyrocketed. At every event at the end, we're like, can you give it 5 stars? Like, well, how do you feel about this? What else would you like to see? And people would just, when we'd say, what else would you like to see? They'd say, I don't know. I'm just so grateful. I felt so isolated, and this is exactly what I needed today. And this connection is everything. And we've hosted some coffee talks, or just you just open it up and anybody can come. And people are like, I need a friend. Like they didn't want, I mean, we all want a promotion and we all want more money. We wouldn't turn it down, but they specifically, they're like, I don't have any friends at VMware. And that was a really big need that wasn't necessarily present when you would go into the office. Now we've polled our entire workforce of about 35,000 people, and only about 15% of them say that they want to go back in the office full time, like butts in chairs. And so that's not very many. Everybody wants either continued remote work or lots of flexibility, which means that that pivot that we made from cupcakes in the office to business agenda and driving a very strong business value aligned with the different departments that we have, that became really, really critical. And so that great leveler of COVID was beneficial to our pod in that everybody's the same. There's no advantage to sitting right outside your manager's office. Like, can I have the best project? Everybody's out there just being rated mostly on their performance. And so in that case, it was a benefit to us.
That and there's so many different pieces that really resonated, but I think just like the statement of like, this is so much more than just selling cupcakes. Like this is our agency, right? And the community that we're fostering. Lissa, if you wouldn't mind also just sharing a bit more about any triumphs or challenges that you've experienced. And then we'll also make a bit of a pivot.
Yeah, definitely. First, I couldn't agree more with, Dr. Brandy and Lorelei, everything you were saying, and not to say again what you were saying, but what happens with the pandemic is everyone is now working from home. Everyone is experiencing that isolation in whatever aspect it is, whether you're brand new at your job and you have no friends, whether you were used to going into the office every single day and seeing friends, and then now you are kind of ripped away from them and you have to be at home. And then you're connected to your devices 24/7. There's no, I'm commuting, I can't answer. It's, I know you're at home and you're probably watching TV and it's 8 p.m. You can answer my email. That leads to burnout. That leads to mental health and not having the best mental health that you can possibly have. And what COVID did was it really put a big spotlight on mental health that wasn't there before. So yeah, people talked about it. It was a thing, but it wasn't as big as it is now. So one of the challenges that came with that is because mental health is one of Enable-In's pillars, there was a big responsibility put on our plate. Not only were the employees coming to us saying, what are resources that we have available to us? Help me, help prevent burnout. What can you give me so I can continue with my day job? But also the executive leadership team at LinkedIn was looking to us of what are the resources we have? what are the members saying? What's the employee group saying around mental health and what they need? And how can we get our messaging to them and vice versa? So the challenge also became the triumph of ERGs have never, at LinkedIn specifically, have never been put under this type of light before. We now have an equal seat at the table with the executive leads. So, and that's like the C-suite level that I'm talking about, which is pretty incredible. So it's not only enabling coming to the table for mental health and resources and other ways that we can support our employees, but it was also our Black group, our Asian group, our Hispanic group dealing with the social injustices, and how do we raise this type of conversation at LinkedIn to raise that awareness and to drive conversation and to help allies understand and to give support to people who are dealing with all of these different issues. So it's challenging because, you know, like I said, we've never had these types of pressures put on us as individual contributors to LinkedIn. And now we're helping come up with the strategy of what should LinkedIn do. So there's a lot of pressure on that, but it's also driving out people who are extremely passionate about our mission and they want to get involved with Enablein at a higher level than just being a member and going to an event. They want to have a seat at the table on our leadership team, which is great. My leadership team is just like a group of fantastic people who are equally as passionate about our mission as I am. And they're the drivers in these conversations and programs that we have in place. So with this virtual world, I'm not sure if we would have fully identified who these people are. I hope that we would, but maybe not. And now they can come to the table. We can have bigger conversations. Everything is virtual. So we're on the phone with APAC, EMEA, NAMER, whoever on the phone at once, which we weren't always doing before we were when we were all in the office. It's like, hey, you know, Lorelei, I sit next to you at the office. Can I talk to you about this? Now I have to call my global comms lead who sits in EMEA and I'm like, hey, let's talk. So, you know, it's been a tough challenge, but also a really great opportunity as well.
Well, I still have you like unmiked, Lissa. This is a question for both Lorelei and Lissa. How do you balance your ERG work with your full-time role? We talked about burnout and really just like ultimately, you know, like fulfilling your cup, so to speak, before you pour into others. But I'd love just to hear about any like tactics you use or any lessons learned.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that this is one of the biggest pieces that leads struggle with. This is just a volunteer role. So how much time is expected to get put in here versus my day job where I'm paid, I'm trying to get that promotion, I'm trying to get a raise. So this is a skill that I've actually worked on. I've been involved with Enablein in a leadership role for almost 5 years now, not the global co-lead, but starting as a Chicago office lead and then the NAMER lead and now the global co-lead. So what does that look like and how am I prioritizing? Well, a couple pieces that I've been practicing over the years is understanding what are the big months that we're working around. So I've already mentioned May for Mental Health Awareness Month and October for National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And how long does it take to plan these events? What type of team do I need to put into place to make sure that these events drive forward? So I'm not doing all this work myself. Like I already mentioned, my team is freaking fantastic and I love each and every one of them. I wouldn't be able to do my job without them. So having a really strong team in place with people that you trust, who you know are going to get the work done, is vital to any type of leadership role that you have, whether it's your day job or it's this employee resource group. And also understanding that I have a really great co-lead as my partner. And so if I can't do something because I have something big going on at work in my day job, then she can pick it up and vice versa. So making sure that you're really open, making sure that you're communicating with your leadership team within the ERG to let them know, hey, this is where I can lean in. This is where I can dedicate time. You know what? I'm a little thin at the moment. This person can pick this up. And so go work with that person. So that's kind of how I've been managing it. Also making sure that you are in communication with your own manager. And, you know, my manager is so supportive of my work within my ERG, and same with my senior manager. My senior manager is the NAMER lead for our veterans group. So she kind of gets the work that goes into it. And so having those two people support me is vital, and getting your manager's buy-in is challenging and something that we've been working on at LinkedIn when we're having career conversations. I now write reviews for every single one of my leadership teams so that their managers can see what type of work that is, what their work is impacting LinkedIn. So having that strong team, knowing how to prioritize and having great time management and pivoting where you need to and saying, I don't have the bandwidth, I'm going to burn out if I do this again, is okay. It's okay to do in your day job at LinkedIn. It's okay to do in your day job saying, I need to take a mental health day. And it's okay to do with your employee resource group as well. So that's just kind of what I've learned over the past couple of years.
I love that. And also congrats on 5 years of being involved in ERG, because
Thanks.
That's certainly a marvel. Lorelai, I have a bit of a pivot to the question that I asked.
Sure.
So there's a lot of interest in like data, right? And I think that was like a light bulb moment for me. Dr. Brandy did a +1, and certainly in the comments.
Yeah.
So how do you capture relevant data to show the positive impact of ERG events and what that impact in turn has on employee relations, retention, or business performance?
It's such a good question. We have an advantage over a lot of the other ERGs. Ours, the male, female, gender, non-binary, is usually asked pretty upfront at organizations and tracked pretty thoroughly if your organization is fairly large. So we don't have to track that. As a matter of fact, we don't see the HR systems that occurs in, but we can make requests and we can look at really great and relevant data about not just our hiring practices, but about exit interviews. And so cumulatively, we have a lot to go on. Internally, we track membership data, we track the amount of events, we tally up the amount of participants at events. We do satisfaction surveys after every single event, and then we take and really quick, like 3 questions, and we track that very closely. When we look at hiring, so we have the looking externally to VMware, which is like hiring and representation. So how many women are here? How much are we out in the world showcasing amazing women? And then internally, professional development, culture, that sort of thing. And so we look at the hiring numbers. How many women are we hiring? Are we really hiring 1 in 3 new hires as a woman or an underrepresented minority? And then if we're not, then there are ramifications to our senior managers. So they get certain encouragements to do the right thing. And from 2018 to now, we used to have 23% women overall in the company, and now we have about 28%. So we've made a huge jump of 5%. And so we track stuff like that. We also track who's coming to our events. Is it director level and below? What about senior director and above? What's our target market, if you will? So we know that 94% of our members are director level and below, and about 20% of those are allies. So they're men and gender non-binary who consider themselves part of the pod and they want to encourage women in the workplace, and they show up. So we really keep an eye on making sure that our programs hit right in that sweet spot to appeal to the most amount of the audience members. And then beyond that, it's hard to measure how much love you've put out into the community. And we've talked about DE&I, we haven't talked about B for belonging. How much has the Women at VMware team made our members feel like they really belong, like they have a friend at VMware, they have somebody to talk to, they're welcome here. And that's especially difficult to do in a virtual environment, to just push all that affection at them. But we get good anecdotal evidence. So we have pages and pages of people saying, I was going to leave VMware and then I found women at VMware and I feel like I can stay. Thank goodness, because this is quite a changeable world right now. So that's one of the things that we're most proud of, is not the data, but the feeling.
And that's the best, like almost like a dual pronged approach of leveraging the data to inform programs, right? To understand that what we need to advocate for, but also not hinging solely on the data to show the impact. Because you're right, belonging is something that we can't always quantitatively look at. Dr. Brandy, there's so much excitement within the chat and the Q&A around like pro tips as it relates to setting up an ERG. And so start with Dr. Brandy and then open floor for everyone. But if you're starting off an ERG or perhaps revitalizing an ERG that might be a bit stagnant, what are some thought starters in terms of where to begin?
Sure. So I'll actually begin kind of where Alyssa left off. I think we need to really think about the structure. I'm a big proponent of planning out your year's events ahead of time. If you are using data, if you are being strategic, then you shouldn't be sort of meeting about meetings, right? Ideating and ideating and ideating. It's like, let's look at the calendar and let's look also at our capacity. What can we do very well? Let's look at this in 90-day sprints. What can we do first 90 days of every year that's really unique to us that we want to, okay, next quarter. And so when you do that, then the next step, which a lot of companies miss, is really kind of reverse engineering those tasks, those things that need to be done, getting organized and using technology to help you to do that, whether it's in Asana, a Basecamp, Freecamp, Monday.com, or whatever. Because we can't talk about these things without making sure that we're taking a DEI approach. So in the DEI, I'm talking about the E, equity. We have to be mindful because we know from high school and from college what happens when you're working on a team project and a group project. Inevitably, there's that person or two that doesn't do their job. And so we don't want to put it on these ERG leads to have to manage all of that. We want to make sure that people know the commitment ahead of time. They know what they're getting into, because a lot of people join with passion. And when work starts to kick their butt, and when personal, life happens, which for all of us, their engagement goes down, and we don't want to dismiss them, right? We don't want to be like, can you leave, right? Which is what because they're like, I wish they would just bow out. But no, they'll kind of hang around. So I think in terms of the setup, we want to make sure that we have an agreement, even one page, I don't call them a contract, but something that we can review and say, we anticipate this should take you about 5 to 7 hours per month to participate in this. And we've created the systems and processes to track that. When I look at Asana and I notice, this person's tasks are late, then it helps and empowers that ERG lead to have that discussion and check in and say, hey, Bob, I'm realizing that, some of your ERG, some of the tasks, the things to plan our upcoming mental health event is running a little bit behind. What's going on? The other thing I recommend is collecting data when people drop off of these committees or these groups to figure out why. Is it burnout? Is it that something's going on with the leadership of the group or other dynamics within the group? There are some power dynamics. Lissa's amazing. She's been doing for 5 years. She's going strong, but I have heard horror stories about that person that is going a little bit power crazy now that they are the chair of the ERG group. And no one feels like they have a safe place to be able to share that, like, something's going on, because they don't want to, rain on anyone's parade. But we have to talk about equity. And so we can't have people volunteering their time, putting their blood, sweat, and tears in without setting up that structure that makes sure it's as equitable as possible. Now, if you want to go extra and go hammer time and work 20 hours a month because you're that passionate, that's great. But we don't want it to be that you're drowning in the work because the structure and the accountability and processes aren't there, right? That's the first thing. The second thing I want to say, in terms of just going back to that planning piece, as much lead time as you can get is really important. You should not be reinventing the wheel every single year. Double down on what works well, add maybe a few tweaks, but you should be doing the same thing every. It's like your brand. It's the thing that we love to do. So 90% of what you do should be the same, maybe 10% of that one-off program. The last thing I'll kind of say in terms of structure with ERGs is, I think right now, and companies in general, even with diversity committees and things like that, let's think outside of the box. I know Black History Month is every February. My gosh, what about Black Futures? I know the history is great. The history is important. Don't try to misquote me, guys, in a comment. Dr. Brandy said Black History Month does. I didn't say that. But what I'm saying is, how can we reimagine, tell new stories? Do I have to have this designated time in the dead of winter? If you're in the upper East Coast, I don't want the coldest month of the year. What can we do to show value and be less predictable than literal with everything? So I think that the kind of fun calendar, national this month, and that, sure, that's great. Nothing's wrong with it. But I think that we're going into a place and a space where we can be even more strategic and purposeful with how we are saying that we're viewing our African-American employees, how we're saying we're viewing our Asian American, because I don't want to only be tied to my history, I want to be tied to my future, my possibilities there. So what else can we do something in August? I don't know, you know? And so we want to be well-rounded and I think innovative in that place and space. We are launching something called DEICommitteelaunch.com. It'll be done in a couple weeks. And we're thinking about an ERG version of that. How can you launch in 30 days? What are the minimal things that you can do to be able to get your ERG up and running with a structure, with the forms and the templates? Because the work that the things you're hearing Lisa and Lorelei talk about, these are big companies here. These are these are the big boys. We're not playing any games in these kind of companies. And so you can get there, but we have to eat this elephant one bite at a time, optimize for your company culture. And I think that, you know, we need to be authentic in how we're choosing to operate and launch and do our ERGs. There are some best practices, but there's a lot of space for innovation and creativity that I think can let people off the hook with trying to be like LinkedIn and trying to structure like a LinkedIn, when maybe you can be a little bit more unique and do something differently that's more authentic to your workforce and where you are right away. Yeah.
Very beautiful and very thorough rundown of like ultimately kind of the, you know, the triumphs, but also pitfalls, because to it, it's not a one size fits all structure, just contingent upon company size, but also ERG. So 2 quick questions before we break out to networking. I just want to reiterate to everyone that 1, please keep the questions coming. Also, there's been a lot of like specific questions for individual panelists. And so the networking tables, if time provides, allows for that more intimate communication. So wanted to flag that. But for Lisa and Lorelei, same question, but in terms of your structure, right, of like ERGs, do you have any quick hits as it relates to, you know, for like Lisa's case, if you went back 5 years ago, how you would better structure, you know, any ERG at LinkedIn, or Lorelei, you know, global is such a huge component of all that you do. How do you build so that's sensitive for, you know, a whole world?
Yeah, I can jump in first because I think Dr. Brandy was hitting on some very important points here. One being, you don't just need to operate around that specific month. And Dr. Brandy, that's something we're trying to pull out of and do more and continue throughout the year. So I'm glad you highlighted that piece, because I'm just like, oh yeah, this is just so resonating with me right now. But thinking about the structure, and we just, within the past 2 years, restructured our ERGs to make it so the smallest ERG has the same support system in place that our big ERGs have. Like when I joined Enable In, it was just a couple office leads, 2 global chairs, like a communications lead. And then you see like the large ERGs, and they have like global comms, regional, like all these different people in there. And it's like, how do I get that? But thinking about, you know, not everybody is going to have all the pieces at the same time. We had our DIBS team, our diversity, inclusion, belonging team, structure this for the ERGs. So that was fantastic that they came in and did that, because we needed it. But thinking about the important roles that you need to kick off these events, like who's going to be thinking about 90 days in advance, here's the programs we need to do. We have a global program manager, and she kicks butt. Like, she's so great. And she's came up with her own ideas, and she created processes in place that we will do year over year to make sure that we don't fall behind on any planning or programming. Another key player to have in your back pocket is your global comms lead. My global comms lead she gets us into our company updates. She's getting us into different lines of business that I never even knew existed at LinkedIn. So just having somebody who's going to take that initiative and drive it forward. Also, a role I never knew I needed, but I can't live without, is a global chief of staff. My global chief of staff comes to every meeting that I'm in and my global co-lead are in, taking notes, keeping everybody organized, keeping everyone up to date, also helping create different processes that we have. So those are some big key ones that I would recommend people getting, but also not forgetting your office leads, the boots on the ground people. Every role in between is also important. And I think the big piece here is having the right people in place. The people who are going to be able to prioritize, who are going to take, this is a volunteer role, how do I prioritize it with my day job? And having that same passion and drive and everything that you need to make this a really strong organization. So having those roles and the structure in place, but also the people to help drive it forward in all roles, is key to success in my eyes.
that. And it's almost like, right, you just need to have the infrastructure in place on the business side for the advocacy. Lorelai, would love to hear your thoughts, whether it's like a +1 or any other additional pieces.
Well, it's definitely a +1, but in addition, so our DE&I team set us up with a great structure. We call our ERGs pods, Power of Difference, and they put out a pod playbook. And so that was just our handbook to get started. And it also outlined what is eligible to be an employee resource group and what is not. And that was really helpful as people came to us and made suggestions. But in terms of the structure, what they put in place when the ERGs were 500, 800 people. Well, now we're 6,000 people and we're almost entirely virtual. And so there are some adjustments that need to be made. So it used to be very geographical. And to Lissa's point, there was like the communications manager, Austin communications manager, and blah, blah, blah. And there was a deep, 12 people who are like, I'm in the leadership team on Women at VMware. And we're like, okay, cool. But what are you doing? What action are you doing? And that's the pivot that we're having to kind of drive down through the organization, which is it's nice to have the title, but one of the most important things that you can do is take action and be a leader. One of the biggest challenges is being the global co-lead is delegating, because people are like, I'd love to do that. I don't know how. And so one of the tools that we use is how-to documents. So everything I do, I'm going to write a how-to document. I'm going to drag a friend along with me. And so if you say to yourself, like, if Carrie says like, hey, Lorelai, I don't know how to get involved. Like, I'm hoping I can get involved. I'll be like, okay, come with me. Like, here we go virtually. Let's set up a social media post, or let's start an event. We'll put an event on the calendar. And then also having people who are not oriented to the geographic location, but are oriented to a task. And so Lissa was talking about like the chief of staff. For us, treasurer is huge. We have a tiny budget and we milk it and we work it and we track it. And Magda, I'm like, go, you have an invoice, go to Magda. And she takes care of the whole thing. And it's just the best. So I'd say put a treasurer in. And a social media content creator. So we have internal social media. We also use LinkedIn. Hello. But our internal social media to get out the women's stories and to celebrate people who've won awards. So we have somebody who is designated to looking for those internal women's stories, to looking at things like in Harvard Business Review or McKinsey Report about women, posting those to really keep our channel up and fresh and current and interesting. And so, and one we have 5 executive sponsors. We're rich. We have so many executive sponsors. If anyone wants one, I have a couple extra to hand out. But that one of them has taken it upon herself every Monday morning to do like a Monday meditation, like a little quote or a meme that she really loves, and people love it. They thumbs up it, they heart it, and it just continues to build community. And so those are things that we didn't know we needed previously. And we really benefit from having those very specialized roles, and it gives people who aren't quite ready for a leadership role a way to actively participate. And so as you're thinking about, well, how are we going to generate enough tasks for all of these people to truly get involved? We can't stuff envelopes because that's a physical thing. Think about your social media interaction. Think about roles that happen and tasks that happen, like, okay, maybe I'll only do this once a month, fill out all the expense forms for any costs. But that's a really important role, and it helps the entire organization. So in terms of structure, I would say that that's how we started, was very geographic. And that's how we're evolving, is to be much more task, action, and role-based.
Also just the component of like bringing up leadership with you, right? So like by bringing the person along to shadow a process, you're also making it sustainable. So in any case of the events, Lorelai is like out of pocket. Now we have me that understands how to do the process, and I can actually slot in. So love the sustainability. I know we're at time, but if you all wouldn't mind indulging me for one last question, any quick hits as it relates to the future of ERGs? So hybrid seems to be a common theme of like, hey, a lot of folks want to remain virtual. How are we thinking through like asynchronous events? Any other just like 1 or 2 words as it relates to things that you're anticipating for 2022? And then we'll break out for networking. Lorelai, you first.
Yeah, I would say that it's less about like what's the future, because I have no idea, but it's a little bit more about like what I have learned as one of my most important roles, and the roles of all of the other women who are in, and men, because one of our executive sponsors is a man. All of the people who are in roles of leadership is to push empowerment down into the organization as far as you possibly can. So anyone at Women at VMware or even outside of our employee resource group can come up with an idea for an event and kind of just run it past us and be like, this is what I think I'm going to do. And we're like, great, what do you need? So we see ourselves as a conduit out to the greater organization, an advertising firm, if you will, a little public relations. We have all the templates, like I said, how-to documents, speaker briefs, anything that if you said like, I want to bring in a vendor to talk about menopause. We're like, awesome, that's great. What do you think? US only? Do you think, other countries? Should we open it up globally? And we ask that person to take the lead. So instead of them saying, we think you guys should do a session on menopause. I'm like, well, there's no, you guys, we're all volunteers. There's no, like, yes, there's a leadership team, but we are here to set the stage and accelerate and help women rise and boost you forward. And so that's been surprising to members of our employee resource group. And they are like, me? What do you mean? I should do it? Yeah, definitely. Definitely you should do it. And that's been something that I hope we continue to do, is that feeling of empowerment and individual ownership and taking action. And so that's how I see us evolving even more.
I love that. That's truly community-led growth and community-led events within that. And that's certainly something that we're seeing as a big trend as well. Dr. Brandy, and then Lissa, you'll take us home.
Okay, I've been over here in the Q&A trying to get responses in, because I'll have to jump off before for the networking piece. But I definitely think that when you think about the future, you're right, there's no crystal ball, but we are going to be seeing this kind of online, offline hybrid, where people can have local meetups, groups can have local meetups in your respective city that the company can sponsor. So I think the innovation piece is there. We're already seeing, I think the remote, of course, events are going to be here to stay for the most part. But I think, having those local opportunities connect are going to be important. The other thing I think that is something that we can consider now, especially because it's virtual, is really there being more opportunities for leadership in that, as you scale and as you grow, really being a little bit decentralized. I know we were talking just now about kind of centralizing some of those core pieces, but what are some other ways that we can continue to delegate and help other people have those leadership opportunities? When you're volunteering your time, when you are helping to grow, it's all about your brand. Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And we want to be able to share that wealth and share that opportunity for people in their workplaces to say, hey, I'm content with my current role, or maybe I'm trying to go somewhere else. How can we really use ERGs to help people advance in their career? And the other thing is, last little point I'll make is, I just want to plant a seed, is let's think about how we are giving back to those that are volunteering and being part of our ERGs. Something as simple as maybe a LinkedIn recommendation for somebody from an executive sponsor or something like that can go a long way for people who are volunteering their time. It doesn't have to be something that costs money, but that public acknowledgement, the shout outs, those type of things really help and make the difference and inspire people to continue to be involved. So excited, great discussion today. I'll shut up. Lissa, close us out, and I'll jump back in the Q&A and see if there's anything over there I can answer.
Thank you. And Dr. Brandy, one of the pieces that I was going to say, so I won't, is like the career development piece and how are we using this to advance your career? So I'll pivot and come up with a different idea that I had in my back pocket was the future of ERGs is changing. This is a very interesting time to get involved because I think people are more aware of all of the different issues that we have going on and how do we make the world a better place. So I think ERGs are coming to the table, and I was talking about this earlier, of ERGs, especially at LinkedIn, are getting a table at a seat at the table at the executive level, the C-suites. The CMO is one of our executive sponsors, so that's fantastic that we have her ear to go right to the CEO and vice versa, which is a great opportunity. But I think that that is going to be shifting with a lot of ERGs, because what we're dealing with now from 2020 to present day and into the future, there's a lot that has changed in the world. So how can ERGs help drive that change forward, create a good conversation around it, and, you know, make good change happen? So I think that that's the future of another piece of the future of where we're going to be going with the ERGs. We now have a bigger seat at the table, and it's more responsibility, but it's great responsibility. So that's what I want to leave today. So if anyone on the phone or the line is like, should I join an ERG? 100% yes, because you never know where it's going to take you, and it will hopefully only take you up and inspire you to do good.
Absolutely. Y'all, thank you so much. Quite literally, I know everyone always says like we could talk all day about this, but like there's just so much great info that I'm just like gleaning from you all. And I'll now pass it over to Marcia to close us out and take us to networking.
Thank you so much, Kari, and thank you so much to all of the panelists. What an incredible discussion. I wish that we could do sort of like a standing ovation, but in the virtual world, let's flood the chat with your favorite emoji. I want to see a lot of claps in there, the fire emoji, whatever speaks to you. Just as a huge thank you to our incredible panelists. Like Kari said, I feel like we could have kept this going for 2-3 hours.